Alright, welcome back. And this is video part 5. And in the last video part, we discussed 3 categories of academic skills that could be targeted in an assessment. Now what we're going to examine are 5 categories of classroom stimuli that could be targeted for assessment. The first is antecedents for response classes. So these are those stimuli that control classes of responses. For example, directions to give vocal-verbal responses, to start working, to read questions, and to write answers. Now, their ability to evoke the correct responses depends on contingencies of differential reinforcement to establish and maintain their control over behavior. Stimuli may also include those that evoke students' orientation to relevant materials, or events such as saying, "Look at me," "Listen," or "Get ready," or "Now, write your answer." All of which are actually particularly important for group instruction. Now, stimuli may also include physical proximity between student and teacher, and the teacher's presence at the front of the class lecturing. Okay, so these are all antecedents for response classes. In other words, when assessing a student's difficulty with learning something or their challenging behavior, there are antecedent stimuli in the classroom or in other contexts that either control the behavior or have weak control over the behavior. And so you can assess those stimuli in your assessment. All of the stimuli in this category, antecedents for response classes, are what is typically meant by environmental arrangements. So when I refer to a particular environmental arrangement, I'm saying those particular antecedent stimuli that are present, which could be influencing the current probability of the student's skill or their behavior, or challenging behavior. Task stimuli. These are more specifically stimuli that comprise a given task or activity. So if you want, you could look at task stimuli as a subset of antecedents for response classes. The specific subset is that these comprise a given task or activity, such as items on a math worksheet. Subtle features of stimuli can evoke different responses based on a student's learning history. And so by assessing certain features of task stimuli, you can learn about what the student's apparent learning history is and how that's related to the current context and which variables you may need to modify to improve student learning. So for example, a student trained to fluency to read text on a computer screen may not read at the same pace on the page of a printed book. That's because there are subtle features that differ between those stimuli, the text on a computer screen and on the page of a printed book. And so for this student's learning history, they perform differently to those subtle differences in the stimuli there. Now, the next is category is instructional prompts. All right, so these are supplemental stimuli provided by the teacher in the presence of certain environmental arrangements, or task stimuli. So those are the 2 categories we talked about before. To evoke the target response. And prompt fading procedures combined with differential reinforcement to bring the target response under the control of those environmental arrangements or task stimuli. So in other words, in the presence of a given instruction, either written or spoken instruction to a student, or the words or numbers or symbols on a sheet of paper or on the page of a book or on the whiteboard or somewhere else in the room, if those task stimuli or those aspects of the environmental arrangement are not evoking relevant academic responses, correct academic responses, then what you can do is you can add instructional prompts. You don't even need the word instructional there, it's just you can add prompts, and those are supplemental stimuli that will evoke the correct academic response in the presence of the naturally occurring task stimuli or environmental arrangement that should be evoking the student's behavior. So examples of instructional prompts can include verbal prompts, gestural, movement, positional, model, and physical. The fourth category consists of consequences. So far we've talked about antecedent stimuli, the naturally occurring antecedent stimuli that would evoke relevant academic behavior, and the prompts that you could add and then gradually fade out as you differentially reinforce correct responses in the presence of those naturally occurring environmental arrangements or task stimuli. And now we're looking at the third term in the three-term contingency for operant behavior, right? So you have antecedent response, consequence. We've looked at antecedents, now we're talking about consequences. These are stimuli produced by the academic behavior which alters the future probability of the behavior, either increases the probability it will reoccur, that's reinforcement, or decreases the probability that it will reoccur, that's punishment. Now examples of consequences include permanent products, so the results of the student's behavior that are automatically produced and are a change in the environment that's permanent enough for someone else to observe it. Such as, students come in the morning and complete a morning warm-up worksheet. That's a review of stuff that was taught the day before, and when they're done writing, they turn it in, they drop it in the teacher's inbox. It's a completed worksheet. So the completed worksheet is an example of a permanent product. Teacher praise, reprimands, tokens, points, error corrections, other tangible events like preferred items or activities identified by stimulus preference assessments and reinforcer assessments, peer feedback, and more. These are all types of consequences that you can assess when you're assessing assessing a student's skill and trying to figure out why the skill isn't strengthening, why the student isn't learning it, or why challenging behavior is competing with irrelevant academic behavior. And then the immediate physical setting. Examples include desk arrangements, the size of the classroom, objects in the classroom, temperature, lighting, and more. These can all have effects on academic behavior as well. Alright, let's do some ASRs. ASR 13. Orientation to materials, motor activities, and permanent products are categories of A, classroom stimuli, or B, academic skills. A couple more seconds. Alright, I'll close the poll. And the answer here is B. These are categories of academic skills. ASR 14. Orientation to materials, motor activities, and permanent products are also known as environmental arrangements. Is that A, true, or B, false? Couple more seconds. Alright, I'll go ahead and close the poll. The answer here, this is false. Now, environmental arrangements are part of one of the categories of classroom stimuli you can assess when assessing student learning and relevant in assessing academic behavior. ASR 15. Which are also known as environmental arrangements? Is it A, task stimuli, B, consequences, C, immediate physical setting, or D, antecedents for response classes? A couple more seconds. Alright, I'll close the poll. The answer here is D, antecedents for response classes. Those are those discriminative stimuli that set the occasion for relevant academic responses. ASR 16. Words on flashcards, question on math worksheets, days of the week on an electronic calendar are examples of A, task stimuli, B, consequences, C, immediate physical setting, or D, antecedents for response classes. A couple more seconds. All right, I'll go ahead and close the poll, and the answer is A, task stimuli. ASR 17. Tokens, points, or error corrections are types of A, task stimuli, B, consequences, C, immediate physical setting, D, antecedents for response classes. Couple more seconds. All right, I'll close the poll. The answer here is B, consequences. ASR 18. The light coming in from the window, the whiteboard, and the rugs on the carpet are examples of A, task stimuli, B, consequences, C, immediate physical setting, or D, antecedents for response classes. A couple more seconds. All right, I'll close the poll, and the answer is C, immediate physical setting. ASR 19. What stimuli set the occasion for relevant academic behavior? A, reinforcers, B, SDs, C, MOs, or D, prompts? Couple more seconds. All right, I'll close the poll, and the answer here is B, SDs. If the relevant academic behavior is not occurring, then you can add instructional prompts to evoke relevant academic behavior in the presence of stimuli that in the future will set the occasion for that academic behavior. So that wraps up that video part, and we'll revisit the behavioral intervention cycle from SP 3633 in the next video part. See you then.